One of the big growth areas in the electrification of transportation is e-transit. And an announcement was made today about a new project out of Toronto that is going to be, will speed up the charging of electric buses and also save the transit authority money. So we're going to be talking to Carmine Pizzurro from eCamion and Josipa Petrunic from CUTRIC. So Carmine and Josipa, welcome to the interview.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks so much.
Now, Carmine, maybe you can give us a brief overview of what the project is and why it's important.
So one of the key enablers for electrification, not only of transit, but any electric vehicle, and you see it a lot in news reports and media reports, is that the one big limiting factor is electrification, the grid. The grid everybody talks about the grid not having enough capacity. And in one sense, that is true. What our technology does is eliminates that as a reason not to electrify transit. So and I'll try to explain the technology, and please interrupt me and let me know if I've explained it right, because I'm an engineer, so I'll try to explain it. So we take, basically we take a small amount of energy from the grid. We store it in a battery, because that's what we've done for the last 10 years. We build energy storage devices from lithium batteries. And then from the battery, because the battery is DC, well, let me go back, AC from the grid, DC to the battery is DC, it goes directly to the bus, DC battery. So what we've developed here at eCamion, along with University of Toronto locally, is basically you take that DC battery and you match the DC battery voltage. So you got to match the voltages between the battery and the bus. So what does this do? When you install typical battery charging systems for transit, it takes a huge amount of money of getting power from the grid and then to the charging mechanism or charger, because you have to convert it from AC to DC. To get power, that kind of power from the grid is very, very expensive, laborious, and there's all sorts of cost associated with that. What we've done is basically eliminated that cost. Okay, so in effect, we can almost put our charging unit anywhere en route, which means, you know, on the route, we could put it back on the charging at the depot, and it basically eliminates all that infrastructure. So
Carmine, so if I understand this correctly, you've got your technology takes the AC from the grid, converts it to DC, stores it in a battery, and that makes it available to the transit bus whenever it needs it, and does it at a time when it's cheaper, so you can do it overnight.
Yes.
And store it. And also, if I understand this correctly, it makes it faster, because you charge the bus's battery faster than if with the conventional chargers. Have I got that correct?
Well, there are chargers that are very fast. Our batteries, I'm not going to say that the other chargers are not fast. Ours are there's almost, the limit for us is the bus. It's not the grid. So and the cost of these charging units from other companies are just, they are very, very high, never mind the installation costs from the grid.
So is there an opportunity here? I know in the press conference you just had with Josipa, you mentioned export opportunities, and this is something I'm really interested in, because this sounds like a unique Canadian technology that has application any place where e-buses are being implemented, and that particularly you got to think China and maybe Europe.
Yes, right now we're focusing on the US, but yes, it could be installed anywhere, or we'd like to export it anywhere globally. Obviously, we're starting with the US because it's next door neighbor, and they have similar, I guess, projects to do to electrify their transit authority. So eCamion started off with doing electric vehicles. So we've got, we just it was recently announced, if you Google us, eCamion in Florida, we're doing 5 stations in the state of Florida along the highway for the evacuation route. So that's where we have been talking to transit agencies. We're also using this technology. We're this close from getting awarded a job in Alaska to do garbage trucks, sanitation trucks. And that's another application of this technology. So this, for the technology that we're doing for CUTRIC and for Durham Transit, it's high power. It's, anything above 300 kilowatts. So other applications can be used.
Gotcha. Now, final question for you, Carmine. I pay a lot of attention to battery technology improvements, and it sounds like there have been some very significant advances recently in battery technology. We're going to see costs go down quite a bit. We're going to see energy density come up quite a bit. That has, if I understand this correctly, that has got to play right into your technology.
Definitely. The largest cost for our unit, one of the largest costs is the actual battery itself. We've been doing it for 10 years. In 10 years, the costs have gone, they're about half the price. Now, I'll hold that. The cells and batteries, we build our own batteries. We purchase the cells from the US. The cells that we use are very, very high quality, so they're not the cheapest cells. The batteries or the cells that we need to use for these applications have to be of high quality and high power. So we just can't just buy them from anywhere. So the costs haven't gone down so much for those. But even though those costs are still a little bit high and they're coming down, you're right, we're still a fraction of the cost of typical systems.
Understood. Josipa, could you please explain how CUTRIC is involved in this project?
Yeah, sure. So, CUTRIC has 2 branches. One side, we come up with ideas of great innovative projects, and then we run around town and try and convince our transit agencies and manufacturers to join us, spend some money, take some risk, launch something big, and make Canada first, like electric bus integration, which I've talked to you about before, or standardization. Then the other side of CUTRIC is we've actually launched a funding program, and we worked with the Ontario government. They funded us at $10 million in 2016. And with that $10 million, our job was to create about 130 to 200 jobs, academically or in the industry sector, like with eCamion. So we created a program where we invited our members, like eCamion, to apply for funding. And part of assessment was, are you going to create a technology that's going to help save the planet through emissions reduction that's applicable to transit? And are you going to create jobs in Canada? So those are the 2 biggest criteria, and eCamion won funding through that program. Now, the irony is that program, which has been hugely successful, ran for 3 years. We deployed about 14 projects. There's a couple more announcements coming up, created hundreds of jobs, but was unfortunately canceled by the Ontario government last year as a cost-cutting measure. So we're back at the table with the Ontario government, and you would have seen in our announcement with MPP Skelly provincially, asking for them to renew the program as green recovery, because it creates a lot of jobs with very little money.
Well, speaking of green recovery, of course, we've had the throne speech last week, which, that was a big focus of the throne speech. And the promise from the Liberal government was that there will be more money coming for green initiatives. It sounds like federal money may be flowing into CUTRIC to replace some of this provincial money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the economy is strong in our industrial sector. And, there's naysayers and critics of the budget. How are we going to fund it all? The reality is that's the kind of criticism you hear from folks who make a lot of money off the 20th century economy that we need to abandon in many ways. The 21st century economy that the throne speech is investing in is precisely the kind of area that eCamion would grow into and that our transit agencies need. So one of the great things about this is if we look at this kind of tech, we work with a lot of transit agencies. We model out how their buses will cost them, how much it'll cost them to power them up. And as Carmine mentioned, one of the biggest costs is not the electricity, it's the power, the demand charge, pulling that power at that moment of time at hundreds of kilowatts of intensity. If you can reduce that with some battery storage in between and throttle control and modify that, you're saving transit agencies hundreds or tens of millions of dollars in operational costs, and the country hundreds of millions over the course of the life cycle of those vehicles. So when we look at the throne speech and you hear critics saying, how are we going to pay for it? It pays for itself. Because if you start looking at how diesel buses operate and the cost of them compared to how electric buses operate and the cost of the electricity, especially with these kinds of technologies, they pay themselves off in a matter of years, and then we're profiting as taxpayers.
Final question for you, Josipa. One of the things that excites me about this is the fact that the overarching technology of electric buses or electric vehicles has been proven, and now we're into the many small improvements and iterations that will make it economic and practical and so on. And it's really exciting to see a Canadian company kind of lead in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I think the industry has been under-recognized in general. And I've said this before, and I sound like a broken record, and it's ad nauseum, but so much attention has been on the automotive sector in its traditional branch plant environment in Ontario. And our branch plant environment of the auto sector, the big five in Ontario, has not historically innovated these new products. They're starting to, and we just heard a Ford announcement about electric vehicle manufacturing in an arrangement with the union. That's starting 2020. We're 10 years late to the game in the auto sector. So what hasn't gone noticed is the Bombardiers and the New Flyers and the Nova buses and the ABBs and Siemens located here, and the eCamions and the Electrovias and the Hydro-Quebecs that are developing energy storage, energy mitigation, high power charging. So that industry has existed without support, without recognition. And this throne speech gives it a chance to get the recognition, get the investment, and grow at the rapid pace that the auto sector has been able to do in the past, and which the petroleum sector, frankly, has been able to do in the past with the kinds of investments they received. I mean, you don't have to go too far back in history to know that 1980 SAG-D technology in the oil sands was federally and provincially funded. The taxpayer funded that tech. So if we got that same kind of tech investment in this sector, boy, do we have a big economy with a lot of jobs.
Well, that's really encouraging. Folks, thank you very much for this. Carmine, good luck with your project. And Josipa, I will look forward to more interviews of this type in the future.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, folks. That
Okay.
was terrific.
Thanks so much, Markham.